Your judgments about another person say more about your own character than the person that you are pointing a finger at. There are plenty of people who do not criticize, point fingers, or judge. This is the character of the kind of people we do want to develop close relationships with. Alaric Hutchinson. You're listening to Parenting in the Rain, Insights from the Experts podcast, episode 39.
Welcome to Parenting in the Rain, Insights from the Experts podcast, providing parents all around the world with valuable knowledge to help with the biggies of family life. Here's your host, a registered play therapist, education specialist, parent coach, and my mom, Jackie Flynn.
Hi there, Jackie Flynn here. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Parenting in the Rain podcast. I hope wherever you are and whatever you're doing, you're having a wonderful day. Well, as I do this podcast episode and I think about all of the communication and kind messages that I've really received from you guys, thank you if that's you. And if not, I just kind of want to put that energy out there that I absolutely love it. I read every message, whether it's a review of the podcast on iTunes or if it's an email that's sent to me directly. But if you have something you'd like to learn more about, feel free to contact me and request a topic that you feel like I could help with. My email is jackie@jackieflynnconsulting.com. And I've been kind of toying around with having an episode that just covers those questions. So go ahead and send me a question or a topic that you'd like to have covered. I'll do my best to have it on the show. Well, today's episode is all about understanding the aftermath of trash talk. And that word aftermath, I heard it a couple of times during the hurricane when it was expected to really kind of devastate this area. I am so grateful that it did not. But there was that prediction that something might happen and how would they clean up afterwards. So that word came up there, and it also is part of my Gottman Methods couples therapy. In the approach that I use with clients, I love Gottman Method couples therapy. I always get kind of tongue-tied on that. It has one intervention that is absolutely one of my favorites. It's called The Aftermath of a Fight. And that really helps couples learn how to have a disagreement in a different way, because through the Gottman research, we know that 69% of the disagreements in a marital or couples relationship, they're perpetual problems. They're not solvable. So really learning how to disagree in a healthier way is ultimately what makes the longevity of the marriage kind of be present. So today's episode here on the podcast is understanding the aftermath of trash talk. Now, fortunately, I don't see a lot of trash talk in my practice. I certainly have seen some, though. I think for the most part, people are pretty respectful, pretty kind, and just really want others to kind of go along with their opinions. But that trash talk, I think sometimes people do it and they don't really realize the magnitude of the damage that it can cause in relationships. So let's really begin with a clear understanding of what I mean when I say trash talk. You may have heard that term before, or may have not. My definition of trash talk is when someone intentionally attempts to degrade someone by speaking poorly of them in a manner that involves that, like defamation, that maliciousness, that malintent, just that purposeful intent to hurt someone or make them look bad to other people. Sometimes people call it poor mouthing. I've heard it called vilifying, specifically in one of the books that I read. That's definitely a stronger version, but it can be present, and bad mouthing. Now, the areas that I've most heard this is in situations of divorce or separation, the high conflict situations. That's where it seems to be most present. And that's where people are in a lot of pain. And I think sometimes people that are in those situations, they look to other people that have went through the same thing, and they give them advice based on their experience. So it kind of normalizes it. So that trash talk becomes kind of acceptable in their eyes. And they think, well, this is the way that people act, or this is my right to act like this. But it can really have devastating impacts on relationships, whether it's a couple's relationship, a parent-child relationship, relationships with peers, relationships at work, relationships in your neighborhood. Trash talk is something that once it's been done, it really can't be undone. So things can slip out of our mouths in the blink of an eye, just really quick. And when it's truly trash talking, it's done by just more than one comment, I believe. I think it's ongoing, and it's just that culture of, I'm going to beat you down with my words and my actions in a big way to make myself look or feel better. And again, this may not be done intentionally. It may be done as a coping mechanism for the person to deal with whatever they're dealing with. I know that years ago, I had some training in love and logic, and I read about leveling. Leveling is that concept of people bringing people down to make themselves feel like they are up. So it's really that same type of thing that was really talked about in a bullying context. But bullying is a very specific word. Certainly it can be a type of bullying, but we're going to talk about it more as a behavior today. So you may have heard of trash talking used in the world of sports or politics, and I think it absolutely applies in the world of families and parenting and things like that too. So in my experience, trash talking is most present in divorce situations, but it can also be present in other situations where there's not divorce. Family member relationships, friendships that have gone poorly, or other relationships with members of an organization or a company, maybe a disgruntled employee or disgruntled boss, with teachers. I've seen it before where people were really upset at a school, and they may say and do things. I've heard it referred to like as a smear campaign, really kind of make that person feel bad for whatever decision that they made. It can be present in so many places, and it's unhealthy, and it can cause so much devastation. And that's where I came up with the title of The Aftermath of Trash Talking, because it is devastating. The bottom line is that it's not healthy for a person to do trash talking, as well as it isn't good for them. It's not healthy for their target. It's not healthy for them or those watching. Now, if it's in front of our children or targeted to our children or people that our children love, whether it's their parents or their family members, it can really have an extra impact. They're really kind of using us as parents to look, how do you treat people in the world? We're really their blueprint. So you want to make sure that you model that good, healthy behavior. And if something is hurting inside of you and you feel like that is causing you to act this way, I really think that it would be helpful to kind of seek out some professional help and really heal from that, because it can happen to anybody. And if you are the target of trash talking, it can help to get some professional support as well. Sometimes it helps to go to therapy. Sometimes it helps to kind of reach out for a life coach, sometimes to reach out to a friend. One thing you want to be really careful about is not to really kind of return the behavior, because if somebody acts like that to you and you just act like that to them, then it's more of a back and forth. You're really kind of just contributing to it, right? So if somebody's acting like this to you, they're trash talking you, it is not like a freebie pass to act like that to them, because it can be hurtful and it can really feel yucky inside. So you want to, if you find yourself tempted to do that, you want to just resist that urge and look for some relief through other realms, because there is healing that can happen. And it's just not respectful. I had an interview with Laura Regan on emotional abuse a while back. And in that interview, we talk about the impact of emotional abuse. And I believe this trash talking really falls in line with emotional abuse. There's so many healthier ways to convey dissatisfaction with another person's actions. And there's ways to work through disagreements and problems that are so much more effective. When a person uses trash talking as their default, like that's what they go to when they feel hurt, it really does say a lot about them and their character. The quote, hurt people, can apply in this one as well. I know I've mentioned it in a couple of episodes, because people that aim to hurt people, they're not really in a healthy space themselves. It's a sign that they're in need of maybe some communication skills, some inner healing, some social skills, and really kind of looking at what kind of wounds are they in need of healing from that is causing this need, this desire to hurt people. Now, I first heard that phrase, that quote, in a class that I took in grad school, in an addictions class. And in that class, it really talked about how that deep level of pain can cause people to want to kind of strike out. And I've definitely seen that in my practice. I've seen some people that just really have strong character, but they feel that pain, and that desire to have someone else feel the pain is, it can be really present, and that can be so painful. It can be really painful. There's a lot of different therapies that can help with both someone who does the trash talking and someone who is targeted. And maybe if that person is both, there's definitely some hope for that situation. Now, in the families of divorce and situations, there are definitely some wounds that happen, and it can leave a need for healing. And it doesn't mean that you've done something wrong by seeking a divorce. I don't know your situation. I don't know what went on in your family. But if there is that need for healing, just kind of recognize it for what it is. When we have that emotional pain and those emotional scars, you can't actually touch them. So sometimes people think, well, that's not real. We'll just pull ourselves up by our bootstraps and just be tough and go on. And when that happens, a lot of people suffer. And that's where the hurt people ends up being like a cycle. And it can go on for generations. Lots and lots of unnecessary pain there. And it really, really has the big ingredient of betrayal. Especially for kids. That betrayal and that confusion for the kids are not uncommon during those situations. I read a book called Divorce Poison by William Morrow, and it's a pretty heavy book. It is a big, thick book, but in terms of content, it is pretty heavy. After you read some of it, kind of gives you that feeling of like, oh my goodness, it could be so much happier than this. Life doesn't have to be filled with pain. It could be so much easier and so much more enjoyable. But in that book, Divorce Poison, there was a lot of good information. And through my readings, I can't remember whether it's specifically in that book or another book, but one thing is short, and I've noticed this in my practice as well. A kid often identifies himself as half of one parent and half of the other. That's just the way it is. And when one of their parents trash talks the other, or if they trash talk a family member, it can really hurt, and it can really hurt on a deep level. It can feel like a personal attack. They can think, well, if my mom or my dad or my aunt and my uncle is whatever they're being accused of being, then I must be half that. It can be painful for anyone, though, but especially for children. Children are so vulnerable, and it really limits their ability to enjoy their childhood in a way that gives them that confidence, gives them that zest for life. And it can strike them in a really intimate part of their life. Just think about that thought of them identifying with the messages that are being sent. Is that really what you want your kid to identify with? Now, if you're the target, that may even feel even more devastating, thinking, well, I know it bothered me, but I didn't know that it had the potential to upset my child as much as this. So if that is happening in your family and you have that access or that opportunity for family therapy, it's definitely worth considering, because it can pull those relationships back together and it can heal. I love the quote from Ernest Hemingway that said, "The world breaks us all." I might be getting this a little bit mixed up, but the world breaks us all, but many of us are stronger in the broken places. And I really think of a bone, how when a bone breaks, sometimes right there at the break, it can be stronger because of the calcium deposits than it was beforehand. And that's the way this can be. If it's happening, you can go pursue some healing and allow yourself to heal and move on from it and not really cause it to bring you down any more than it already has. People, they don't benefit from thinking or knowing about how defective another person is. Sometimes there's that misconception that, well, if the child only realized how whatever their other parent is, then they would really kind of understand where I'm coming from. So where you really get your best response there is, what's in the best interest of my child? Taking the situation off of you and really looking at, how is my kid going to best benefit from this? But you want to make sure that you take care of yourself too, just like that. Put your oxygen mask on before you put on your child's oxygen mask, that message that they tell us when we board a plane and we get ready for a flight. Make sure you take care of yourself as well. So what do you do when somebody is trash talking you? Have you ever been the victim of trash talk? Have you ever had those feelings of just betrayal and anger and like helplessness and hopelessness that can encompass? How do you respond to when somebody's trash talking you? Do you just let it happen, or do you fight back? Do you have a one-liner that you respond with, or do you document it? Do you let it bother you? Is it something that you allow to take up space in your head? I've heard that phrase, don't let it take the real estate in your head. And that's so true. But that's definitely easier said than done, because these intimate relationships in our life, we kind of really let them in those vulnerable spaces. And when people use that against us and they attack us in those vulnerable spaces, it really can hurt. So really kind of identify it for what it is and give yourself permission to really recognize that experience, not taking it on as part of something that you did or not identifying as a victim, just really realizing that it is a maladaptive behavior that somebody has formed. It's a behavior that somebody, whoever's doing the trash talking, has really created in hopes that it would make them feel better for whatever they're going through. So unfortunately, there's no cookie cutter response on what to do when somebody trash talks you. It really does depend. Don't you just love that answer? There's no, when this happens, do this, especially in my line of work and some lines of work there is, and in some spaces there are here as well. There's always room for tweaking it. But one thing I know for sure is choosing kindness, respect, and just really calling on your inner wisdom can be really helpful, even when the other person is not reciprocating it to you. And that could really take an extra level of maturity, extra level of humanness to be able to say, you know what, this person who's trash talking me is at, obviously they're hurting, and hurt people, but I don't have to take it on as something that I did or that I caused. I could just recognize it for what it is. But remember, though, taking that opportunity to return the trash talking behavior, it really does just put you at their level, and it does not make the situation better, especially in families, parent-child relationships, that spousal relationships. It can magnify it way more than just double. And if your kids are watching, one thing, and this is to me like the saddest part of it all, it normalizes that behavior, and it teaches them that trash talking is acceptable, and that's what they should do when they feel pain. So it really kind of makes that maladaptive behavior contagious, and it makes it go even further than it would have. So always run those situations through your respect, your wisdom, and your kindness filter. You can't go wrong there. And it is helpful, though, to discuss it with your child. In some cases, you may need to document what's happening if it gets out of hand, and that's something that I read in that Divorce Poison book. But know when to seek professional assistance, though, whether it's a therapist to help you heal from it or help you heal from whatever is causing it, or help you kind of get to a point of resiliency. Or you may want to seek assistance from an attorney if that's something that you need. I am not an attorney, and I am not doing this episode out of like therapeutic benefit. It is important to mention that this podcast is not therapy, nor is it a substitute for therapy. It is also not legal advice. It's merely meant for self-care and educational purposes only. So if you need professional support, go ahead and kind of really consider that and run it through your situation to see what is available to you wherever you're at and whatever you're going through. I do wish you the best. Seeking support from therapists, though, can help you heal from this, as well as give you some calming and some coping skills. Now, I'm a therapist here in Florida, and I only provide therapy to my clients here in Florida, but I really do enjoy helping people through situations like this because I've seen so much healing and so much growth that it's just beautiful. So remember, though, trash talking is a betrayal, and it can feel like a betrayal. It can feel like a huge betrayal that leaves us with a guard up, leaves us kind of saying, hey, I'm not going to let that happen again. Some people refer to that as like feeling jaded or burned. I offer a type of therapy at my private practice called EMDR therapy, as well as brain spotting, somatic experiencing. There's lots of different approaches to that. And Gottman method couples therapy is really a great type of therapy to help relationships, specifically couples and marital relationships that have endured betrayals. Sometimes people think of betrayal as just like infidelity or kind of messing with the finances in a way that you didn't agree on. But trash talking is definitely a type of betrayal, and it's painful and it can cut deep. But the healing can be done. It's not easy, though. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. But people can heal and move on. And they can figure that healing as really an avenue to get to healthier relationships and life improvement ultimately. I think here that old adage, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, definitely applies. The healing process really involves regaining trust. And as you know, it's so much easier to keep trust than it is to try to earn it back. But it can be earned back. I've seen it done. Carl Jung had just such a great quote. It was the quote of, everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. And that quote is definitely true. When we feel irritated about someone else, just kind of look and see, hey, is that something that I'm struggling with? All right. I just want to thank you so much for listening to this episode. You can find a free download at this episode on parentingintherain.com. Also, you can find the show notes there. I have some links to books and products that I love. I'm an affiliate of some of those, as well as some labyrinths. Labyrinths are really, it's a tool that I use every day in my private practice, but I use it on a personal level too, because it can help synchronize your right and your left hemisphere of your brain to help you process through some of that painful stuff that can kind of leave you feeling weighed down in your life. Well, if you want the show notes to this episode, again, it's at parentingintherain.com. And if you're an iTunes user, be sure to subscribe, rate, and review to the podcast, Parenting in the Rain podcast. And also, I have such a wonderful Facebook group community. I just love you guys in there. If you're not in that community yet, be sure to join, and I have a Facebook page. I share my podcast episodes in there, some helpful information. Sometimes people seek some questions from other people. It's just a really good community. Really like it. All right. Thank you so much for listening. Until next time, take care.